9 AD, Rome had expanded its influence from the deserts of North Africa to the dense forests of northern Germany. Rome had held the area beyond the Rhine and had suppressed the German tribes for nearly 20 years, and they had made plans for the Romanization of Germany. In order to begin the Romanization of Germany, Rome sent a Roman army to survey the region. Each area Rome conquers and wishes to Romanize is surveyed by a Roman army. The Roman army decides how to organize the country, such as where to build streets and the best areas for the foundations for the towns. Rome sent in its 17th, 18th, and 19th legions under the command of Quintilius Varus to inspect the area across the Rhine. Varus was not a general, he was a lawyer and lacked a basic understanding of military strategy. Varus became a general because he had married the emperor's great niece and his rank proceeded accordingly. The legions left in the early spring of 9 AD following the river Lippe, and then they would turn north into the Weser to set up camp. Varus went to German tribes, and he was not only cruel to the Germans, but he was greedy and he took money away from them. The Germans would not tolerate the demands that the Romans were making. They would secretly make plans and hide weapons from the Romans, waiting and biding their time. Varus felt confident that there would not be an uprising because he was surrounded by his German auxiliary led by Arminius. Arminius fought in many battles for the Romans, which allowed him to learn Roman strategy, and he also knew the Romans' weak points. Arminius did not like Varus, and the thought that Germany was under his control was repulsive to him. He thought there is a global man with no military experience at all. And that is when he hatched a plot to destroy Varus and his legions. In the late summer of 9 AD, Varus began to move his legions back south to get their winter quarters. For Varus and the legions, the journey back would be slow and difficult due to the terrain. The terrain made communications for the Romans almost impossible, and Arminius knew this. Before the Romans left to go to their winter quarters, Arminius began to share his thoughts on how to destroy the Roman legions to the Germans. He spoke to few at first, but then he spoke to the tribe leaders and unified the tribes. He said that the Romans could be cut off by surprise. He then began to add action to resolution, and they created a time to carry out their plan. The plan was to bide their time, then at the right moment Arminius would send a message of an uprising to the northwest, hoping that Varus would change course into the uncharted forest. Amazingly, Varus did change course, a decision which proved fatal. Once the Romans entered the forest, Arminius launched his attacks. The Romans were stretched out in a column for miles. The front row of the column was about half a day in front of the back of the column. This allowed Arminius to attack where and when he wanted. Arminius would attack random parts of the column, leaving the head to lead the survivors deeper into the forest. The Germans built walls and ditches which trapped the Romans like wild animals. The Germans were able to hack the Romans to eat them. The Romans tried to form the normal formations, but their equipment made the Romans handicapped in the terrain. The Germans continued to attack the column for the entire first day. However, Varus remained unaware of the carnage that had occurred further down the column. He pressed onward. The Germans continued to harass the Roman lines for the entire first night. By this point, the reality of the situation had been brought to Varus' attention, but now he was lost and did not know where he was. At the beginning of the second day, the Germans attacked the legions again. It was then that word spread through the column that Varus was dead. When the news reached many of the officers, they took their own lives, fearing that they would either be hacked to pieces by the Germans or captured. Lost and demoralized, the remaining officers led the survivors onward, hoping to find a way out. The Germans prepared for one final blow to the surviving Romans.
Owens!
The survivors made ready for one last stand. Outnumbered and leaderless, the surviving Romans stood no chance. All three legions with full civilian entourage were wiped out. Rome would never again have a 17th, 18th, or 19th Legion. Rome, the world superpower, was on its knees. Out of the 20,000 soldiers, less than 1,500 escaped either the battle or captivity.
Ja, das ist gut.
6 years after the battle, a living Roman army under the command of Germanicus went to exact revenge on the local tribes when they discovered the grim fate of Varus and his legions. After 6 years, the bodies of the legions had been stripped of their uniforms and equipment and then reduced to a carpet of bones which stretched for miles. Survivors of the disaster, who went with Germanicus, showed them where the Germans had made altars and massacred the Roman colonels and senior company commanders. Instead of leave the bodies in the forest, Germanicus decided to bury everything, every trace of Rome's shame.